Alright guys, Michael here from 3D Print Everything, and help me figure out this bed warping problem I'm having. So look at this part and see how it's warped. Now I want this flat. This is a nice chunk of polycarbonate printed completely solid, and I am trying to figure out how to reduce that. Now I went ahead and bought a specific bed. You can see this bed is much thicker, and they were claiming that this one would be a lot harder to warp, and you know, a lot of reviews said watch your fingers when you put this on, it's going to clamp down so hard, you know, it's very stiff, it's going to be hard to bend, but we can see here that it's pretty much bent as much as the stock one, and may even be bending more. So I'm not having an issue adhering to the plate. You know, we are using the Vision Miner nanopolymer glue, which really holds the print down when it's hot and helps it release when it's not. But I am still having this issue. The only other thing I could potentially think of is by the same company, I believe. I bought this build plate, which does kind of have these cool little patterns on it. I don't know how I feel about the snowflakes, but this is supposedly a twice as thick build plate as one of the standard, well, that's not a standard one, as one of the standard ones. So the standard ones, from my understanding, are about 0.35 of a millimeter. This one is 0.77. Now that one is 1.5, but it's 1.5 in, like, you can see here, it's not all steel. Like, it still looks like just a 3.5 bed with a more standard, I'm not sure what that is. Composite is the right term. So with the composite on top, and that composite is supposed to help it be more stiff and stick to the plate, but it's just really not. So if you know of any tips or tricks, or if you've come up with this, you know, the only thing I can really think of is maybe 3D printing a teeny little bracket that I could just put over those two edges, and then maybe, like, if I look at this one, there might be some type of bracket to put on this edge here where it can grab. So, you know, that's about the only thing I can think of, is trying to print something that can grab there. And, you know, for a stock plate, it's built a little differently. So I would have to build like a left and right side for dependent on if you have your bed flipped. Versus, you know, this one where there's only the little piece in the middle that's obstructing it. But you know, like, maybe I could have just a teeny bracket there. You know, I just gotta make sure it doesn't interfere with anything. I'm just really kind of at a loss of how to get this bed to stay adhered to the build plate, because, you know, in my other video, I showed that I got this to show the magnetic field, and I was curious if the magnetic field was weaker, you know, on the edges or worse. But it looks fairly even, yeah, you know, all the way across. So I don't think my beds are bad in any way. I just think that, you know, let me look at that again. Yeah, it looks the same. So I'm not seeing any weakening or damage of the magnetic field as far as I can tell there. But, like, let's feel. This one does feel objectively heavier, but, like, you know, that's not that many pounds of pressure when it comes to, like, I can tell that's a little bit stiffer to get off. So the goal being that if this plate is thicker, then it'll be harder to warp. And you can see even PETG is wanting to pull up the plate. Let's see. You know, it doesn't, like, the thicker plate is objectively better, but I don't think it's going to be enough strength and whatnot to help prevent what's happening with this polycarbonate print. So yeah, if you can think of anything or know of any other product. You know, I've done some light researching, and I just don't see that many people complaining about this. My only other thought is that I get a larger printer, like either the HD2 or a K2 Max, and I print that there, where there's a lot more magnetic strength outside of the print area, because this is getting pretty close to the edge of the print. You know, if there's more meat holding that plate down on the outside of the print, then that should keep it from warping up, because there's just no more magnetic field, you know, that away. But there's not really, like, there's not a place that I can see that I can add more magnets to really hold it down. I don't think a magnet on top would make a difference. You know, maybe that's the answer, some little teeny neodymium magnets that I could put just right on the corners. But I don't necessarily think that's going to work. I mean, let me just see, because I actually have some, where are they? I have some laying around here. Right here. So we've got some little 7mm magnets. I've already opened this one. What do y'all think of my new desk here? What? I thought I opened these. 2 seconds. I'm gonna put the phone down. Okay. So let's just do a test here on the phone. And I'm gonna take, you know, a nice little stack of these, and with one hand figure out how to get, like, you know, maybe separate. Okay, whatever. I'm just curious, if I was to put, you know, say 2 of these down, like, is this gonna interface with the magnet underneath? Like, what does that look like with the magnetic field? You know, like, there's not really any, like, you can barely see the magnetic field coming through here, but, like, I don't think, it's interesting. I can feel it, like, okay, so I can feel it grabbing the magnetic field. So that, like, you see how jumpy it is? I'm just curious what would be the right orientation, because one side should be repelling, right? And then the other side's going to grab more. But that just doesn't feel like it's going to make a difference. I really don't feel like it's going to. So, I mean, maybe a much stronger one. Maybe if I got, you know, a bigger neodymium specific magnet, and then after the print starts, I put, you know, a couple of these on each corner. You know, the trick being, how do I know if it's just adhering to the bed versus, like, which way is the right way? Like, I think I can feel a difference, but the difference feels so light that I can't really tell. But that's, like, the only thing I can potentially think of. And, you know, that's not going to work on a print like this, or on a print bed like this where it's super thick. Like, I would have to have a much thicker build plate. That is interesting that I can see the magnetic field just barely. I would have to have a much not thicker, a much more stronger magnet in order to do that. But that might be one option I explore. So I'm still just trying to figure this out, guys. I am not sure what the answer is. I'm more or less asking for your help. If you know of any tips or tricks to potentially, you know, I think I'm going to leave these here and see what happens. Because, look, I can take them off and they're going to stay, right? Like, does that feel any stronger? Like, maybe? I don't know. I'm not even exactly sure how to test if it was going to work. Other than, like, run this massive chunk of a print that's, you know, 2.5 days long and 2 rolls of filament. So, anyways, guys, thanks for checking this out and giving me your advice. Like, share, subscribe, all the things. Comment down below if you have any tips or tricks. I would greatly appreciate it. Have a good day.